can join in and still kind of capture the main topic of the conversation. So this is a slightly different live chat than any of the others you might have been to, just because Sam and I aren't careers advisors. We are co-op students on placement with the career service, so we just have a different perspective. So we thought, instead of trying to do what the careers advisors do, not as well as they do it, we thought, what do we have that's unique, our experience and our perspective? So that's what this is about. So this is the Working Remotely and Student Experience Workshop, and we're just going to look at our own experiences in starting out and moving into a remote working environment, and also just what the journey's been like and some of the advice we would give along the way. So this isn't so much a workshop where a lecturer kind of provides you with, here are the answers and here's the facts on the topic. It's more of a conversation where we're at your level already. We don't claim any particular expertise or to know more than you do yourself about your own experiences. This is just an open conversation about what we think of it and what we've seen. So this is just, as I've said there. Sam, do you have any points you'd like to add?
Yeah, so it's basically based off our experiences. We're not kind of educating, we're not teaching. It's just more of a conversation between myself and Ian, because we both have very different perspectives, which we'll get into now in a minute. So we're just going to talk about ourselves first. My name is Samantha. I am just finished my second year in digital media design, and I'm just going into third year. So I'm on co-op now from June to January 21 with the Career Service Office, and I am currently living at home and working from home, whereas Ian is kind of in a bit of a different situation. Ian, if you want to.
Yeah. So my name's Ian. I am a second year art student studying English and humanities, but I'm a mature student. I'm living in an apartment of my own with my partner and 6-month-old little baby. She's currently asleep in the bedroom, and hopefully she'll stay down for the rest of this meeting. So obviously, as a mature student, I have a different set of experiences. I have different job experiences even before returning to university. I was a tour guide. I worked in the Lexman Library at one point as well. So those are very social, face-to-face roles. This is the first time with the career service I've ever worked remotely through a screen. And when I started in January, I had a couple of months in the office in the conventional sense. And I've since moved remotely. Whereas Sam, your entire experience with this placement has been remote. So that's kind of a key difference we're going to come back to as well.
So yeah, I also have a bit of experience as well. I worked as a hairdresser, and then I also worked as an administrator in a home care company. So both are quite different, but it was very people based and being interactive with people. So I've kind of had to take that bit away and work from the computer. So I've had to kind of improve on aspects like emailing people and kind of trying to get that bit of a relationship through emails, where as that's kind of been taken away from when you do it in person. So we're definitely learning different things from working from home in that sense. You can't really be prepared to work from home, no matter how much experience you have.
Yeah, and I definitely add to that. Especially if you are actively searching for work, or you've gotten interviews, or even if you've started your job and you're just very new in your position, working remotely has its own challenges, and sometimes it feels like because you've never done something similar to it before that you have no experience. And it's not entirely true. Any experience you have in any area, really, you can use to some extent. Obviously, again, I mentioned being a tour guide at one point. A lot of the skills, that the hard skills of being a tour guide don't apply to this role, but certain soft elements about professionalism, about timekeeping, about the language you use with your coworkers and customers, if you call them that, so you always find, if you take a chance to review your own circumstances and your recent history, you'll find you have more experience to prepare you for your role than you might have otherwise expected. So you're not going in completely unarmed and unequipped to handle those circumstances. Just to mention what stood out the most about the difference in the workplace is, I think for everybody, it'll probably be the fact that you're in your home environment. So there's no physical separation. There's no easy separation between spaces where this is where you work and this is where you study and this is where you are at home relaxing. I mean, sometimes I'll be writing an email and holding a baby in one arm. So you really do have to sort of juggle a bit more skillfully than maybe you're used to. But that's something you pick up along the way as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about, if you're starting a remote position, especially as a student where you might be younger or more inexperienced than a lot of your coworkers, is getting to know your coworkers. So, Sam, do you want to tell us about your experience? Because you, again, purely met your coworkers through the remote environment.
Yeah, so I just started at the beginning of June, and on my first day, it was purely based off getting to know everyone. So just on Teams, which is what we use for our meetings, I was able to have an half hour or an hour dedicated to meeting all my different coworkers, which was really nice, I found, because it was kind of just that bit more personal, because we weren't in the working environment, and it wasn't kind of rushed. It was just that half hour dedicated to getting to know each other, which was nice, I found. But everything's been great. Everyone's been so lovely. They're all there to make sure that you're doing well. And they're, as I said, they're only a phone call away as well. I know they're not obviously there physically beside me, and I'm not getting to know them in that sense, or I'm not going to get help from them in that sense. But it's just as good online too. We haven't like run into any troubles. I haven't felt excluded, because obviously I wasn't a part of that kind of group relationship in the office, but I definitely feel a part of it online as well. I don't feel that I'm kind of missing out in that sense. We've definitely made up for it in having those like that full day dedicated to meeting everyone, and like just like that, you are in your co-worker's home pretty much like over a camera. So I think that element kind of just makes it that bit more like a kind of friendship as well, based between you and your co-workers too.
Yeah, and not every workplace maybe will have that same appreciation for having kind of a social connection and the ability to interact on a more humane people-to-people level as other companies. Some companies might be very, this is your job, this is your role, you send off these reports, you send off these emails, and that's about it. They might not give you much in the way of resources to get to know your coworkers. But any opportunity in whatever role you find where you have a chance to socialize and develop a little bit more of a connection, then this is somebody who does that role. Anything that kind of brings people out of being robots from
Yeah.
your experience and also helps you step out of being just a role, a tool. Because if you can connect with your coworkers on a little bit more of a social level, honestly, I find that that's the best circumstance where you help them and they help you. You understand what you need to do a bit better, and you feel a little bit more comfortable when you need to ask them questions. Which,
Exactly.
especially starting out in any position, regardless if it's working remotely or not, you're going to need to ask questions, regardless of how qualified you are for your position. Just even the specific culture of how that office or that environment decides to handle different challenges.
Yeah.
Um, and just to say, like, for me, because I've had meetings with in person with my coworkers and remotely, has the relationship changed? I say, from my experience, no, but that's largely because the career service has been very proactive in setting up coffee meetings. We're basically virtual water cooler chats. Not every company or workplace is going to do that, but if you can find that, definitely take advantage of it and join in. You
Yeah.
know, put yourself out there as a bit of a social person, and it really does pay off. It kind of gets them to know you a bit better.
Exactly.
We also wanted to speak about not just working experience, but also college experience. So, as a mature student, obviously, I have a number of roles behind me. Sam, you have a number of roles behind you, like a hairdresser you mentioned. Not every student is going to have any significant working experience behind them. However, there is still the college experience to fall back on, but there is differences there. Sam, do you want to tell us a bit about the differences?
So I obviously went from college like being into lectures and everything, but I've now gone online before I started co-op. So I had that to go from that college mindset to a professional one, and which is obviously can be a challenge for some people. Like, how do you kind of take away from thinking that it's like college work, that it's like lectures, that it's assignments? How do you kind of go from that mindset to a professional one? So things I started doing was creating a schedule, like being very, very proficient in time management, and getting a lot more professional in speaking professionally. I would dress more professionally, make sure to be on time. Whereas in college, like, you might be on your meeting or your team's meeting with your friends or like other group members, and it's not that kind of professional aspect. And also then you kind of just start thinking as your laptop and as work as just like kind of assignments, and you don't want to do that and you don't want to do this, but you shouldn't feel like that, because it's a job now, and it's like it's something that you're not getting marked on. It's something that you're expected to do and be able to do well. So I think that you kind of have to go from that kind of I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that mindset, and go into work professionally. So just like that, even dressing appropriately, speaking professionally, being good on time management and scheduling different things out, that definitely just makes you feel a bit more professional than being in college would.
Yeah, they're all absolutely useful, important concepts to keep in mind as well. They'll pretty much help you out regardless of what field of work you go into. I just add to that about what's easier about working, I think, than college is in many roles, there's a little bit more freedom to handle your work in whatever way you see fit. If you want to make a cup of tea before or after or during, provided you're not causing time management or communication issues, nobody's really going to have a go at you, especially when you're working remotely. A lot of the time, people just aren't going to know you've got a cup of tea made up beside you. But it also means that you have to sort of be a little bit more honest. I think the college environment, while it gives you a lot more freedom than maybe, secondary level, it still has an element where people will chase after you or people will move deadlines if you negotiate that. Work tends to give you a lot more room to maneuver, but also it's in the expectation that you will actually meet the standards and the goals that are set. So if you're sending off projects at the last possible minute, like you might be used to in college, that's going to be frowned upon. And you might have had the freedom to do so, but it's probably not the ideal way to do it because obviously what you do affects your coworkers and your managers. So honestly, if you think of it like an honesty box, you give as much as you can reasonably, but also it's just important that you need to take accountability and responsibility a little bit more than what you might be used to in college.
Yeah.
But I would say to that, and on the final line there about have I gone from a college mindset to a professional one, day by day it swings up and down. Honestly, there's days where you think of it in very much in terms of an assignment, and you think of it in terms of a lecturer kind of chasing after you to do a role that you were just given. Other times, a great deal of professionalism relies in being proactive and being willing and confident. A task you were given isn't some burden that you have to get through for some other reason. Sometimes that's just you're showing off that you can do it and you can do it well, and you look forward to being able to have something in your day that you perform. Mm-hmm. Sam, if you'd add anything to that?
Just as well on that, in college you might procrastinate a few things every now and again, whereas in work you kind of, just like Ian said, you have to be proactive. You have to be producing something all the time, so you kind of have to take that procrastination element out of it, whereas it might just be a little bit tougher, but you have to know, just like that again, waking up at 9 or 8 and getting ready to be in the office for 9 and finishing at 5 o'clock, you have to be productive between those hours. It's not like, oh, I'll leave it till this day or I'll leave it till that day or I'll do it in the evening times. Them kind of things have to kind of be taken away when you get into that professional area.
The sooner you get things started, the better.
Yeah.
So just following on from what we were discussing there, working from home is, well, my experience of working from home as a mature student is all about trying to reach a state of balance, really, between my family obligations and my work obligations. Those are kind of the two key facets here. And it is definitely a journey. It is not a one and done situation. I have been working from home since March, and I still feel like I'm working out exactly how to make it the ideal circumstance. It's gotten better every day. It's just something you work at. But especially for a mature student with a small child, there are times where you can't negotiate with a baby. Honestly, if you have a partner or older children or siblings or older relatives in your home, you can definitely make them understand. You can communicate them that when you're working, especially on certain tasks, that you need that full time for an opportunity to focus. Whereas a 6-month-old baby has all the power in a negotiation. You really can't debate with her. So sometimes I do just have to do that. But then other times, if it's not too serious, my partner understands that she just needs to step in for a few hours and handle all of that. So again, it's about finding a balance. It's not about maintaining a perfect balance. It's just about working towards that. Mm-hmm. So I know you're in very different circumstances.
Yeah, so I have an older brother and my dad as well. They're both working from home at the minute. So kind of between the hours of 9 to 5, it's just purely based off work. We might just like that meet each other going down the stairs for a cup of tea or see each other at lunch. But we kind of we all respect each other's boundaries because just like that, we all kind of understand. But I was saying just before we started, I have someone downstairs now trying to fix the toilet sink, and he's really loud, and I just had to ask him, be quiet. Can you just stop drilling something for after 12 o'clock because of this presentation? And like, he understands that, but I also know that if this was a meeting or anything, that my coworkers would understand that too if he had to keep going, because everyone's kind of in a different situation at home, and you can't expect the world at your home to stop because you're working. So you kind of have to find that balance, just like we were saying, that maybe between these hours or between this time, can we just keep it kind of separate, because I'm working and these are the hours that I need to work. Because just like that, younger siblings or older relatives at home, they just don't understand that, because they think it's great, like, you're home, this is great crack, we get to spend more time with you and that. But if you start giving into that, then they're going to start taking advantage of that too. They're going to expect you to always be there, which might affect your work, which will affect your work necessarily. You won't be able to be as productive as you might be between those hours if you ask for that kind of time away from them.
And I'd add to that, it's not just a case of from 9 to 5 you are in a separate room completely unavailable.
No.
Obviously, you have to allow a bit of permeability. I mean, I think I mentioned before, there's times where I'm just holding a baby for a few minutes while I'm writing an email. So it's not about sort of putting up this artificial wall between your two roles. Obviously, if you know yourself that you can honestly take a 5-minute break because you finished a task a few minutes early, and you can go and play with your child or go and make a quick sandwich. Obviously, that's where you allow this sort of juggling to come into it. So it's not only just balancing; it's about saying when can I actually take moments to acknowledge the other role that I have. And it would be the same in the other way. If you're on, say, in the evening, spending time with your family, but you know that despite it being the evening, if you just spent 2 minutes doing something, it would save you half an hour's work tomorrow, that it's probably best just to dip out for a few minutes and just do that task. So it's about switching hats quite frequently, or juggling, if that's the metaphor you prefer. A key element, obviously, in balancing how you'd work from home is organization. And for me, organization really means two things: organization in space and organization in time. So working with the careers office, I have 5 or 6 different calendars that I check on and help manage. So that's definitely organization in time, and not just knowing what other people are doing, but obviously having a very good understanding of what you are doing each day and when you need to be doing certain tasks. Because if you're leaving everything sort of to the last moment, not only is it just more stressful, it means that if something else comes up or something that's time sensitive happens, you might be overwhelmed by having too many different roles to do at once. So if you can kind of get stuff done before it's necessary, it gives you more freedom to pick and choose which things you're working on next.
Yeah, definitely. Another challenge as well that you kind of have to take heed of when working from home is knowing your hours and kind of not pushing the limits. So like, you might finish up 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever your hours are. Just, it's a lot easier at home to kind of be like, oh, I'll just finish this up for another hour, or I'll just do this in the evening time. I have time in the evening time to do this, or I just might leave this, or I might do it earlier, or I might skip my lunch and do another job. But it's kind of important not to get into that habit, because at work you wouldn't get into that habit, because you're going to a building to go to an office to work, and you're leaving that office around the same time as everyone else, and everyone's going to make sure that you go for your lunch in the office as well. So it's important to take that time away from the screen. Like if you are working via a laptop, it's important to kind of take those few hours or a few minutes you have and just go for a walk or something. Like, everyone obviously understands that it's difficult to sit down at a desk in your own home for so long, and if you just want to say that you need to go for a walk, it's important to do those things too. Do the things that might just give you a bit of relief for a little while, but definitely finishing when you're supposed to finish is really important, and taking your lunch hours and everything like that, because working from home you just don't really realize the hour spaces you have. You're kind of just like, I'll do that this time and I'll do that another time, and next thing you know it could be 10 o'clock at night and you're still doing work, and nobody else is, and no one expects you to be doing that either. So don't feel that you have to, because everyone knows that come 5 o'clock, like, you might get the job done tomorrow if you didn't get the job finished. No one's expecting you to work after those hours.
I'd like to add as well, a key element of organization, like Sam, you mentioned having a desk and almost the dangers of staying too long at the desk.
Yeah.
Now, depending on your home circumstances, you might be able to have a dedicated room or space that is your working space. If you're like me and you're in a reasonably small apartment, you might not really be able to manage something so official. I actually never have set up sort of a permanent working desk. I sort of migrate as my needs are day by day, either in the sitting room where I am now or in the hallway where there's a chair and a table. But it really depends on, again, like just because I have a small child, where the small child is at in the day, I move to accommodate her needs. So obviously she's sleeping, so I move farther away. So don't be afraid to adapt what your needs are each day. If you're struggling to sort of set up the single perfect desk as you imagine it, instead just break it down into what works today for what reasons, and maybe where would work tomorrow if I do need to move.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you don't have very small children or other constraints on where you can work, if you're able to sort of set up one permanent station, it'll help you get into the mindset more of when you're there, you're working. But you're not obligated to work from one spot either. If you're able to work from a different table and a different chair, why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, one of the key things we wanted to talk about, especially because a lot of this conversation is directed towards students who are planning ahead for once they've gotten their job, or for maybe you've already visited the other live chats, seen all about interview preparations and the skills involved there, and you feel confident, and you're now saying, what happens when I get my job?
Yeah.
You've spent so much effort in getting the job that once you have it, you almost don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we both, Sam and I, discovered is just that there are so many questions you need to ask when you start. And I would say that for anybody at any level of skill, any point in their career, if you're starting in a role, it really does you so much good to just ask questions as early as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like when I started the role, obviously there was a few things like I had difficulty with that I still have difficulty with. But I remember it's like just starting that I didn't want to ask some questions because I felt they were silly, but I wasn't going to get the job done if I hadn't asked those questions. And I'd probably be still looking at the screen if I hadn't asked those questions. Like I've needed help logging into emails that were actually quite easy to do. I needed help sending emails. You nearly go in and you kind of forget like how to do the basic things just out of pure nerves, and you're afraid you're going to do it wrong. So it's important to get those questions out in the beginning, because like even I was told before, if you're not asking the questions in September, then they're going to presume you know it. So you're better off get those questions out in the very beginning, and nobody's going to find them silly or anything. They're not. They're practical, and people realize that the job isn't going to be done without them, and if anything, it'll just prolong the anxiety of trying to get it done. So just like Homer Simpson there, don't be afraid to ask for people to repeat little bits or the whole thing that they told you to do, because if you don't understand, you're not going to get the job done. And it's so understandable as well. Everyone goes through the same experiences. Like it's funny, you could ask someone for help and they could be struggling with the exact same thing, and they could be a lot more experienced than you. Everyone always has different questions to ask. It's nothing to be kind of afraid of, or to pretend like you know everything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember, your coworkers and your managers, the people working around you, you got the job that you were given so that you could do it well. So
Yeah.
that obviously means people typically will want you to succeed in your role. If you're not able to do what you were hired to do, it's more challenging efforts for everybody around you. So it's not even that. I mean, people I think are genuinely kind of kind, but even they have a self-interest in helping you do better as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also, you're always going to find that, like, questions that you think are silly, questions that you think maybe make you seem ignorant of how to actually do your job, really what they show when you ask those questions is that they show that you are proactive and you're willing to grow in your skills and your abilities for your role. If you come in and you never ask questions, one of two things happens. Either uh, people assume that you already know everything, in which case when you're then expected to do all of the tasks you're given at the level of somebody who knows everything, which is going to be very difficult to maintain, and it's probably not worth having that illusion. Or people are going to presume that you're too shy or too reserved or antisocial to ask these questions, in which case it makes it a little bit more difficult when you do need to. This ties back into what we were saying about meeting your coworkers. If you can get an opportunity working remotely to interact with your coworkers more than in just purely the formal mechanical sense of what your roles are. If you get chances to have socialization with them, you can definitely find one or two who might be good mentors for you, might be the people that you go to first to answer these questions, and they really help you get an into understanding all the extra little nuances and all the little challenges and tasks that your job has given you that maybe you didn't know up front and that you'll maybe have to review once or twice later on when you forget a few things.
Yeah, exactly.
So always be confident asking questions. Ask the silliest questions you have confidently, and then apply the answers that you've been given. I think is key.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look ignorant for asking a question. You look ignorant for asking a question and then not learning from the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, on that note, we'll ask you, do you guys have any questions for us, just kind of based off our own experiences? We'll stop recording now as well, just so